So hello, welcome, and thank you very much for coming. So my name is Vitek Urbanec. I am, you might remember me from the SRE Finland group, which merged with DevOps-Finland. So we're now, because there was significant overlap in the audience. So I'm now talking to you as a part of DevOps-Finland. So, and the conception of this talk was when I spoke to Jaakko Palari. You might know him like a co-starter of the SRE Finland, and we were talking about SLIs and SLOs, but beyond the technical fundamentals. One thing we had in common was that when we were trying to roll out SLIs, SLOs as part of an observability strategy at our customers, we ran into some special problems. And these problems are not all technical. Most of the problems were actually connected to people problems and product problems. So Jaakko asked me to give him some sort of brief of how I've overcome these problems for my previous customer. And I figured, well, maybe it's better just to share it with everybody so I don't have to repeat myself. So, hence this talk. So, when I was listening to the previous talk, by the way, I figured that me and Zalando, we also have something in common because I'm also a clothing merchant. So if you want a t-shirt with SLI, SLO swag, I can get you one. So yeah, let's get on with it. Let's see if this, right. So this is the typical setup for a situation. Right now, the SLIs, SLOs, or service level indicators and objectives are part of pretty much every, let's say, cloud offering or observability stack. It just comes with the deal, right? Can I get a show of hands? Is there anybody who doesn't know what SLIs, SLOs are? 1, 2, okay, right. This topic sort of counts on knowing the basics. We're sort of rolling beyond that. But hopefully this is going to be engaging for you folks as well. But most of the people have heard the term, have understood sort of the definition for it. The basic setup is that the platform team enables SLOs and they try to roll it out for all the services within the company. And the leadership is sort of like, oh, the developers will just adopt that. And our operations will magically improve, as it's been said in the book of SRE, chapter I don't know what, right? We found that it doesn't work this way, that the success doesn't come with that, and we're going to figure out where the problems are with this. So, the 3 ways that the SLO rollouts fail. The first reason is that it's treated as a miracle cure for everything operations related, and not a tool for a specific job. It does a job, but it's not fixing your whole operations. It's also done entirely in engineering and never connected to product. But the problems that SLIs, SLOs are solving are very product focused. And the third is that you get overcomplicated, you get too deep in error budgets and figuring out how I'm going to spend the error budget before you establish anything useful. So, how do we deal with that stuff? So, failure mode number 1, it's a tool, not a miracle cure, right? Is there anyone who tried rolling out SLIs, SLOs for a service? There's one dude. Okay, right. So typically this is, when there's a low bar to enter with the SLIs, SLOs, for example, you can deploy that as part of the application signals in AWS. You can you just deploy that, and then you expect like, okay, this is now just going to work. This is going to alert me ahead of the curve. This is going to work. It's going to replace all the other metrics that I have or the other alerts. But that's a misconception. people typically don't think behind, like what's behind the statistics, because that's what it is. SLIs, SLOs are practically just statistics rolling going forward, and there's a niche area that it can fix. So people typically think like, oh, I'm going to get the root cause immediately. And that's the natural thing that engineers do. They want to be alerted on the root causes, not symptoms. They typically I want to know what to fix. I want an alert that rings, and I just go and immediately fix that, and it's going to be fine. But that's not what they do. They will alert you on the symptoms of the problems. That's why I was asking Yuri, have the symptoms, were the symptoms visible? Because the SLI, SLO alerting will get you an idea, okay, there's something wrong with my system, but I know it immediately before the customers start complaining, right? I will go and try to fix it. I have other alerts that are diagnostic. I have diagnostic metrics that I can use to find the problem, but I'm not going to be alerted on the root cause itself. Oh, they will solve the alert fatigue. No, like if you start deploying that with AWS, or if you're rich and you buy the Datadog subscription and you deploy with Datadog, like you start using these out of the box, and you have tons of other alerts flowing into Slack, just a pile of rubbish, and then it's like, oh, it's going to fix the alert fatigue. No, it's going to add to it. If you don't trim your problematic alerts first, it's going to just add more stuff to it that you don't understand, right? And they're not an observability strategy. My current client is amazing, but the initial talks that we had, they're like, oh, we have observability strategy to implement SLOs. Like, that's not really an observability strategy, right? That you don't have SLOs, it's not a problem. The problem is that you don't know when your service is down, and you don't know what the impact of that service being down is, right? You don't know these practical sort of product-focused things. Not having SLOs, nobody cares. Like you can run services without SLOs quite effectively, but they're not fixing this stuff. So know what it's for. Failure mode number 2. Reliability just living in the engineering. When you ask in a company who's responsible, whose ass is on the line if something goes down, or who's responsible for reliability, folks will be pointing to engineering. That's engineering problems. That's operations. Product is interested in features and vibing and prototyping new stuff. This is engineering's problem, and you get that into this sort of vicious cycle or vicious tricycle that you have fun, you have features, everything's running, and then there's disruption, and you start firefighting and start figuring out, okay, this is horrible, we don't have a visibility, something is down, but we don't know what the impact is on the user, so we're just going to tell users, we're down, and it might be just one feature down, but you're sort of, how are you communicating about it, and how you do not know what the actual impact is. It might be something minuscule. You create a bigger problem by telling people, hey, we've crashed. But it might not even be true. So during the firefighting, you've noticed a lot of impact. I was like, my previous customer was this huge US company, and whenever something happened, and before we had SLIs as well, I went on Twitter and I was checking like if anybody's tweeting about us, and there was like lots of, just, oh, is it down again? Oh, come on. And then we communicated about something, and we didn't know I was asking like when I was managing an incident, so what the impact is, like what the users cannot do now. And people are like, well, the latency is down. It's like, yeah, but how does it impact the user for that specific microservice? So you firefight and you figure out, like, we need to do better. We need to prioritize this. And then there's a postmortem. You have action items out of the postmortem, right? Follow up on the action items. But as you get better, as you forget about the disruption and the mess of the incident, you just get like, oh, okay, we just deprioritize this, move on to something else. Because this is seen purely at like, the main pain is felt by engineers. The product quickly forgets. So, yeah, there's that sort of product versus engineering clash that I've indicated. Like, the product cares about like, did users complete checkout? Or did the points apply if like we had a campaign and had discount points, did the points apply during the campaign? And the engineering answers, well, the latency percentile 99 was 340 milliseconds. And these answers don't answer the questions that the product has. And this has actually gone far enough that the product people adopted the same language as engineers. They are reporting to their superiors, saying, like when the business leadership asks, so, you know, why are we getting all these customer complaints? The sort of product leadership for individual microservices, they say, well, the latency is good, but that doesn't really tell you why this, you know, again, the user impact. And the failure mode 3 is jumping straight to complexity. Learning to walk is important before you start running or flying. Well, no, it doesn't work with flying. Running anyway, right, or jumping. So you start deploying the SLO tooling that came with your cloud subscription, and then you start figuring, okay, how do I do this air budget stuff? And you don't even have statistical track of your SLI for, I don't know, for some reasonable time window. You're just like, oh, okay, how am I going to get into these, into spending air budget or using air budget even? What's my concept around it? So, because this needs slow advancement, right? You gradually need to figure out how, how the SLI even looks. Is it correct? Does it respond to the changes that I'm making? There's one thing that's useful around air budgets from the get-go, and that's burn rate alerting. Am I speaking about something that's familiar, like burn rate? There's some nods over there, so just hang on to that. So burn rate is, if you imagine that our budget, let's say if you have 99% SLO and the difference to 100 is 1%, the burn rate is how you're spending, how quickly you're spending that budget. Because that will tell you that sort of tangent of the graph, how quickly you're diving, how much you're in trouble. So that's useful. But you don't have to get immediately into the concepts of like, how I'm going to spend our budget on experimentation. That is a bit of a wet dream even for Google developers. So, first thing, just listening in, or looking at what the SLI is telling you. So this is fairly small. This is from my workshop that I do about service level indicators and resilience engineering. But this is an example that shows you how, if you have different rolling windows for SLIs, how the SLI recovers and how it responds. Because I found that if I presented this like a graph of a default 28 days rolling window of an SLI to people, they're like, well, we had a little blip here, we had an incident, but how come it didn't recover? Right? You still have that 28 days rolling window that needs to roll off. So then it will go back to if you're operating in standard at that level, right? So first you have to look at the SLIs and figure out what is it telling you before you even start setting an objective there, right? Or being serious about the objective. Here's a recovery pattern for an SLI that has a disruption and then it has a degradation, right? These graphs, if you start deploying the SLOs, this will be scary, and it will be difficult to explain to developers, because if you go to developers and say like, you should adopt this is going to fix your alert fatigue, and they're going to look at it and like, what the hell is that? It's like they have their dashboards, they have their metrics, where they sort of are tracking the performance benchmarks, etc. This is completely unfamiliar. So you have to be able to stand in front of them and explain what they're seeing in that, right? So again, the yellow is longer running window, so that's the 28 days, and then you have the blue one, and that's the daily rolling window. So if there's a disruption, rolls right back. Then you get the degradation, then you have the initial disruption jumping backwards, like statistically rolling off from the window. Right? So look at these things first, and then you can progress to other stuff. But just take it easy. So the golden plan, how to roll out the SLOs successfully. Your mileage may vary, but this is what has proven to be effective for me and for, let's say, larger companies where we have some more mature teams and some less mature teams. So let's have a look at that. So phase 1, service-focused SLOs as a practice ground, right? If the initial instinct is always to roll the SLOs for microservices, although that doesn't give you the entire picture, it doesn't give you an end-to-end customer flow, but it's really good for practicing because the services are typically owned by one individual team. They have one service is owned by one team, so they understand that quite clearly. They have metrics readily available where you can build the SLI, so you can base it the metrics like latency or number of errors are readily available, so you can build that SLI from that immediately. And just guesstimate some SLO for it. Just give it a wild guess and don't overthink it. But observe how the indicator behaves. So if we look at really naive kind of API that's using a few services as dependencies, that would be one service where you set that SLI, SLO. Right? You have latency, you have the count of errors available, so you can roll with that. You don't have to make it complex from the start, because you have the metrics and you have the ownership. There's clear one team that needs to own it, and you don't have to span it immediately between multiple teams. Right, so low stakes, fast feedback, and you understand the tooling. You understand what you're looking at, because every provider, especially like Datadog or AWS, they have their specialties. How they display, for example, error budget. Right? You don't want to be caught by surprise if you're talking with your customer or with the folks at work. You want to build that sort of confidence that you understand the tooling well, right? But don't stop there. This is just the first step. Number 2, build the tooling to surface the SLIs and SLOs. Don't wait for perfection and add the story to the number, right? But you also need to create demand for it. If you create something that doesn't really have that demand, you're just going to have another dashboard or another report to look at. That's important. At that point, it's important to include leadership, and they need to be asking questions about, for example, disruptions or changes. It doesn't have to be something as negative as a disruption. You can ship a change that's going to improve your service, improve the latency by some measure, and then you can look at the SLI and say, is it telling the story? Am I seeing that change there? Am I tracking the right thing? So the leaders need to step up, and you need to explain how this works for them, because it's a sort of, we're talking about relative numbers, we're talking about percents. It's quite easy to explain that rather than, I don't know, quantiles of latency, right? But you need to have that demand. You need to involve people, sort of non-technical, more product-oriented people as quick as possible. So what I typically advise is Make it part of your operational reviews. Like, for example, if you're running periodic reviews with the developer teams, it's like, so what disruptions that you have in the past month? And then you can look at the SLI and see like, okay, this I can see a drop here, or it's improving here. Learn together with the developers to tell the story, right? And figure out if maybe you're tracking the wrong thing, get the feedback early, and correct the SLIs, right? Don't wait up. Get product leadership in the room as soon as possible and ask sort of these sort of questions like, which of these events do you think that affected users the most, right? Because you have some timeline there, right? This is again, sorry for that, it's low resolution. I'm not using the whole screen, but here you have so there's an SLI. Here's the objective, and then the disruption starts here, recovers here, and then you have another. That's sort of a degradation of the service. Like, imagine here is completely unusable. Here you're getting some group of people are getting errors. So with product folks in the room, you'll be able to explain what's happening here on the user side and here. And they'll be able to tell you how severe that is. And for example, if you're considering, should we implement a fix that fixes this problem versus this problem, they're going to be able to tell you about the severity and how you should prioritize, right? But they need to be part of these conversations. And phase 4, do I have a number incorrect? I might have skipped phases. Anyway, like after you've sort of got a hang of this on an individual microservice level, then you progress onwards to something that's more relevant to product, and that's a whole flow of an application, whole user journey, right? That's one of the problems, that people just stay in that sort of microservice-oriented deployment, and they don't progress any further. They just have more metrics for their individual services, but it's very difficult to make out, is it, what's the impact of a disruption? What's the impact of an improvement? How do the customers feel or users feel in the situation? So, find a user action that's, for example, login. Like if you have an app, one of the user journeys or user actions is like just logging into the application or changing customer information, right? Figure out the success of these. This is a bit more complex than the microservice oriented because you don't have the metrics readily available. You always have to sort of approximate with, okay, so I can approximate login success by faults on the login service, but it doesn't have to be clear as that. You might need to invest more time into building instrumentation to create that metric that will track that for you, right? So that's why it's sort of step beyond just the available metrics. And it becomes a cross-team effort. And it's something that goes very often against the nature of engineering teams, because they have their services and some other team has the other services. And it's like, this doesn't mix. We do our stuff and they do their stuff, but it's part of the same flow, right? The services, the user experience is dependent on these services working correctly and as well like together. But just the gap between the teams is very often too wide, and people refuse to sort of even consider that. And they have a big issue with, okay, who's going to be alerted? If I have burn rate alerts for an SLO that's set for a flow that's basically encompassing two services from two different teams, who's going to get paged? Who's going to be fixing that? These are real issues that you have to sort of figure out when you're rolling out this way of even like thinking about the services. So, in this sort of user journey, thinking you wouldn't have the SLI SLO for this one specific service. They would be for the whole flow, right? Imagine here it's going like service 1, and then if this succeeds, it needs to call service 2, and then it has some third-party extension. And you need to sort of cover all of that within that user journey, SLI, SLO. And this is like, for a lot of teams, this is just incomprehensible because it's like, do I have to care about a third-party service? I'm not in charge of that. Yeah, it's the dependency. Like, if you build your business, like this could be, for example, Anthropic. Their LLM model. I'm not owning this stuff, but it's the user experience of your users is depending on it. So you sort of have to track it within that flow. Yeah, and once you get the product folks hooked on this idea, once you sort of present it in a compelling enough way, they'll be able to protect your time to invest more into this, right? That sort of vicious tricycle thing, you'll be able to break it and sort of decrease the impact of it because the product folks will immediately realize, okay, this is not actually ops problem, it's a product quality problem, right? If you frame it like that, they'll be able to give you a bit more time to focus on it because product folks typically control the time that the developer teams have. They really just, and without any action like this, they will just focus it on features. So, and then there's the side effects of the miracle cure. But these are actually really good side effects. So, the product and engineering, they start speaking the same language. And you start worrying about the same stuff. And you're able to sort of understand each other. And so I would say like product becomes more aware of the engineering problems or the problems that have been previously just living in the engineering. For example, if you're depending on a legacy service that your development team has to run, but also they're running the modern alternative for it, and they don't have enough time to maintain the legacy service, and the legacy service breaks. Well, just the dependency there is, something that the product also needs to be interested in fixing. And the SLIs, SLOs are a good way to start surfacing that. It's not the perfect way, but it's a way, right? And at the same time, engineers become a bit more product aware. Especially the aha moment is when you explain, that third-party service that you're using, like for agentic stuff, you're also responsible for, you're the face of the whole service, right? So you cannot just blame that on a third-party service collapsing. You have to track that, and you have to put in place maybe some vendor management. Like if a third-party vendor is messing up, you need to measure that as well, right? It's your responsibility still. So the engineers become more aware of like, okay, this is our impact in the whole organization. And I think like one of the very positive side effects is that the individual impact starts becoming measurable. I worked with like the previous customer. I was there as a sort of in a management role, and figuring out like for engineers how they could quantify their impact. If they implemented a change, how do they tell it was successful? This is one way. Like if you move latency SLI from 99.0 to 99.5, and you can prove that with a change that has been implemented, and you can just say, like, just give me more money. Look at that quantifiable impact, right? It's the way how you can sort of prove that the change was successful and the impact of it. So this is like if you're thinking about rolling out SLIs, SLOs, just do these three things. Like that's the immediate thing that you can do, and you can then roll from there. So pick one SLI, first learn what it's telling you, track it, and get it in front of a product person as soon as possible. Yes, and that's it.